Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Birmingham. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are today, and wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. To all who are here this morning, welcome home and happy Easter. If you would like to participate or comment on our service, especially during our sharing of joys and sorrows, please use the chat feature in YouTube. We continue to have many adult enrichment opportunities available this spring. Donna Parsons' fun painting class continues on Friday nights, and there are supply kits available at the church, so you don't even have to think about it. It's a lot of fun. On April 6th, Kim Homer will be discussing the book Wintering by Catherine May. And April 17th, Stephen McClurg will have another philosophical discussion on existentialism. My Common Read discussion has been moved to Tuesday nights starting April 13th, and we are reading Breathe by Imani Perry with congregations all over the world as we celebrate our UUA Common Read. If you'd like to see our offerings or sign up for anything, please type into your browser bit.ly/UUCBS Spring. So it should say UUCB Spring. And note that these links are case sensitive. Please check out this morning's announcements.
Hi everybody, I'm Donna Parsons, and it has been my great privilege to serve as co-chair on the Stewardship Committee this year with Patty Steelman. We want to give a big thank you to all 120 of you who have already sent in your pledges. However, that does mean that we still have some pledge cards out there that need to be filled out. So I'm going to take a minute right now to type in the digital pledge card link into our chat so that you can click on it and make your pledge right now or shortly after the service. Your pledge is so important because soon our board will be voting on the budget for the upcoming year. And your pledge tells us how much money we have to spend. We know it's been a difficult year with COVID, virtual learning for our children, all the tornadoes recently, and so we understand that people have had a lot on their mind. However, it is really important to fill out the pledge card and send it in so that our board can vote on April 15th. Again, thank you to all of you who have already sent in your pledges, and thank you to all of you who will be sending them in soon.
The prelude prepares us for worship.
For holy days on which we recall the old stories, we light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in this sacred place, we light the flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan our future, to be alive in our present, we light the flame.
Day of light and gladness, of prophecy and song, what thoughts within us waken, what hallowed memories throng. The souls arise and widens, past, present, future land, and rises on our vision the life that has no end. The fields of seasons joyous, from mountain range to sea, the tides of life are flowing, fresh, manifold, and free. In valley and on upland, by forest pathway still, all nature's lives in chorus the resurrection give. O dawn of life eternal, to thee our hearts upraise. The Easter song of gladness, the Passover of praise. Thine all the many mansions, the dead lie not away. O faithless from thy fullness, time and eternity.
Our church is supported by those who call our church home and by those who support the efforts of our church to change the world for the better. We share our cash plate every Sunday with organizations whose work reflects UU values to care for marginalized persons, advocate for real and systemic change, defend our environment, and promote justice and equity for all. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Margins. Margins' goal is to uplift and strengthen Black women and their ability to parent. Margins aims to intervene in poverty-stricken family units and restore hope by providing practical support. This includes, but is not limited to, bill assistance, avenues for self-care, child care, activities for children and parents, and monetary help. During this time of social distancing and online worship, please know that church expenses continue. Therefore, we very much appreciate your continuing to pay your pledge or offer your donation by either mailing a check to the church office or by using PayPal or Venmo. Our Venmo account is at UUCBHAM. Please designate whether your offering is for UUCB or Margins. Thank you for your generous support of our church and our Share the Plate recipient. May we give in love and hope.
As we enter our meditative space this morning, we remember that part of being a beloved community is to celebrate our joys together and mourn our sorrows together. This morning we lift up Gil DeCumos' mother, Maxine, who is struggling with some issues related to her health conditions from last fall. So we lift up Maxine and Gil and their family as they continue to figure those things out. We also lift up knowing that our community is part of a microcosm of a much bigger space and a much bigger world. We lift up those in Georgia and Colorado who have been affected by the mass shootings of the last couple of weeks, and we continue to lift up those families, as well as all of those who continue to be re-traumatized by these actions continuing to happen in our world. We also have our thoughts mindfully aware of the trial for the officers who murdered George Floyd this week, and we are watching that with the hope of justice and restoration of community as that trial progresses. Using the chat feature in YouTube, by speaking it aloud, or by sharing it in your heart, please give voice to what is on your heart today. Please hear a spoken meditation for this Easter morning, followed by a moment of silence. Our meditation this morning was written by Reverend Samuel Trumbore, who is a UU minister who identifies as a Buddhist. Eternal Spirit, we witness bringing green growth, throwing out tiny tendrils, seeking support. Sprouting thin twigs, reaching for the bright golden sun, guiding new tubers, seeking water in dark, sandy soil. Be in and amongst us this Easter morning. We gather this morning to celebrate the triumph of life over death. The body can be killed, but the spirit cannot be quenched. Only yesterday had we given up all hope of the promise of the coming divine realm, and today we are renewed and inspired as we realize it is now already here. This morning we remember that pain, suffering, and death are not ends, but can be scary underground passageways to more abundant life if we have the courage to face our fear and crawl through, to be pushed and pulled by the mind-narrowing forces of lust, hate, and confusion. This morning, We renew our dedication to act from our love rather than our fear. We renew our faith in the inherent dignity and worth of all humanity, including ourselves, which cannot be removed from anyone, and seek the nerve to face the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune which may come our way. In our moments of defeat and surrender, may we turn away from the paths of revenge, denial, and cynicism. May we remember the eternal truth spun into the web of life. Our wounds can become sacred, incarnational teaching of the wisdom embedded in the story of resurrection. Let us celebrate this morning. Celebrate the one who never gives up, even in the darkest of winter, our blue-green planet Earth, resurrected anew each spring. Amen and blessed be.
Good morning. Will the children please come forward? Today I would like to tell you the story of the phoenix. Now this is a bird that lays no eggs and it has no young. It is here where the world began and is still living today in a hidden, faraway desert spot. Now one day, when the world was still very young, and the sun looked down and saw a magnificent bird. This bird was beautiful and had shimmering feathers. They were bright, red and gold in color, and shone like the sun itself. The bird dazzled the sun. Glorious phoenix bird, you shall be my bird, and live forever. Live forever, the sun called out. After hearing the sun, the phoenix was overjoyed. It danced around the sky, among the clouds. Glorious sun, from this day onwards, my song shall be for you alone. The beautiful phoenix said, but the poor bird was not happy for long. It was so magnificent that everyone wanted to have a feather. All kinds of men, women, and children chased the phoenix. The bird was incredibly upset, so the phoenix thought, I'll fly away and go east. I shall fly to the land of the rising sun. The phoenix flew, and it flew for a very long time, and at last it came to a desert. The desert was free from all humans, and it flew freely in the desert, singing the praises to the sun above. The phoenix was happy and peaceful. And years passed, and the phoenix did not die. Almost 500 years later, the phoenix grew old and feeble, and it could now soar high among the clouds, nor could it sing as it used to. I don't want to live like this, thought the phoenix. I want to be young again, and I want to fly and sing again. So the phoenix sung out to the sun, "O glorious sun, make me young and strong again." The sun did not answer. And day after day, the phoenix sung out. And when the sun did not answer, the phoenix decided to go back to the land it came from. There it would call out to the sun one more time. It flew across the desert, over hills and green valleys and high mountains, and the journey seemed to be tiring and long for the old phoenix. Whenever the phoenix stopped, it would pick up some cinnamon bark and some fragrant herbs, and it would carry it in its claws. And when the phoenix reached its destination, there it found a tall tree and set to building a nest. And it had used the cinnamon bark and the herbs. and the phoenix flew to a nearby tree and collected some myrrh. And now everything was ready. And the phoenix lifted its head and sang one more time, "O glorious sun, make me young and strong again." This time, the sun heard the phoenix sing. And the sun swiftly chased the clouds and put the wind at rest, and shone down the hillside with all its power. A blinding sight it was. All of the animals ran back into their caves and hid away from the sun's fierce rays, and only the phoenix sat on its nest. It bathed in the sun's light, and suddenly there was a flash, and the phoenix was surrounded by fire. And the flames died out, and after a while, the phoenix was nowhere to be seen. But the tree and the nest weren't at all burnt, and all there was is a silvery gray ash. And then the ash began to tremble, and it started to rise upwards. Slowly, a young bird's head popped out. It was very small, and the bird grew bigger and bigger with every passing minute. And finally, it was itself again, and the phoenix had risen from the ashes. And it lifted its neck, and it spread its beautiful wings, and it soared high into the sky. And I would like you to reflect on this story and to think what it may mean to rise from the ashes. I'd like you to look around today, outside. Maybe you notice that things are changing. Maybe there's green leaves or there's flowers blooming, and that every spring things rise from what seems to be nothing. Thank you so much. Please join me in singing our song.
1, each person is worthwhile. 2, be kind in all you do. 3, we help each other learn. 4, and search for what is true. 5, all people get a vote. 6, build a just and peaceful world. 7, we take care of the earth. That will bring us back to me and you too.
A month ago, Josh convinced me to watch WandaVision, the new series unveiled by Marvel, which is now owned by Disney. A quaint television show where Disney shows off its access to big-budget computer-generated effects, furniture from the Dick Van Dyke era and every decade since, and its ability to hire high-profile actors. I'll admit, at first, I didn't get it for several episodes, but that's how it was intended to be. The show depicts 2 lesser-known superheroes from the Avengers, Scarlet Witch, also known as Wanda Maximoff, and Vision, a vibranium synthezoid with a body created by the villain Ultron, incorporating the Mind Stone, which was brought to sentience by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, also known as Iron Man and the Hulk, uploading the core software of Stark's artificial intelligence Jarvis with energy provided by none other than the god Thor. In one of the Avengers movies, Wanda and Vision fall in love, and in another, Wanda watches as Vision is murdered in a brutal fashion. Her grief devastates her. WandaVision picks up where the movie left off, and we see both Wanda and Vision alive and well, sitting in a sitcom world where problems are small and life is simple, at least on the surface. Wanda openly grieves for her brother who died in another Avengers movie, and Vision says to comfort her, "Well, It can't all be sorrow, can it? He says. I've always been alone, so I don't feel the lack. It's all I've ever known. I've never experienced loss because I've never had a loved one to lose. But what is grief, if not love, persevering? But what is grief, if not love, persevering? From the mouth of a sentient fictional robot comes a line so perfectly delivered that the collective nerddom all around the world gasped in the profoundness of those 8 words. And ministers who are nerds like myself immediately wrote it down in our long list of ongoing sermon ideas. I knew instantly that those 8 words would inspire this Easter sermon. And yet, it's not Wanda's grief over her brother that is the premise of the show. Spoiler alert, it's her grief over the loss of her love Vision, who she has literally resurrected with her supernatural powers in a mind-controlled bubble. It is her love of Vision that perseveres even after his death. 2 weeks ago, we discussed the holiday of Ustra, an ancient pagan Anglo-Saxon holiday that is one source of our symbolism of rabbits and eggs in the spring season. We discussed how the spring holidays all share a theme of rebirth and renewal, from the plants that spring up from the ground to the animals emerging from hibernation to the new life all around us. This is the time that our earth wakes up and begins its work anew. And today is Easter, a holiday we all approach from different directions, but one that still has meaning for many in our congregation. And that's the beauty of being in an interfaith congregation where people believe differently and celebrate differently, that we can celebrate or acknowledge or merely respect one another's beliefs within this setting of beloved community. Ustra was created as a celebration of the changing of the seasons. Easter co-opted the name, but Easter is a remembrance of the last week of the ministry of Jesus' life, a rabbi who was so revolutionary that he was executed by the ruling government of his time. Jesus had many followers who followed him all over Palestine to share his message of hope and reform, his message that women and children mattered, that people of other races and ethnicities mattered, that the poor and the disabled and the imprisoned folks mattered. The teachings of Jesus, just Jesus, without some of the add-ons of the institution of Christianity, are worthwhile goals. And yet, after a couple thousand years of invoking his name and creating empires in his name, we have still yet to grapple with the wisdom of the man from Palestine. We try to make mountains out of molehills when it comes to Jesus, both in our belief and non-belief, instead of looking at the ways he brought meaning to those around him, who continued to pass on those stories to each subsequent generation. And it's challenging to take Jesus' story seriously when so much of his life has been distorted, manipulated, reworded, and used for the oppression of others, as we saw in the video controversy this week with Lil Nas X. Take, for example, the timing of Easter. We schedule Easter on our universal calendar based on the Jewish celebration of Passover, based on an antiquated notion that Jesus' Last Supper was the Passover Seder. And yet modern scholars disagree with this notion, since the Passover Seder in its current form was not established until well after Jesus' death. We can be so judgmental about that resurrection story, even though there are many people throughout time and history whose narratives tell of a resurrection from the dead. When we get lost in the details, we lose focus on the meaning. I have no doubt that what happened on that day so many years ago felt so real and tangible to the people who were experiencing it. The other people in the resurrection story, Mary Magdalene, Mary, Salome, the disciples, all of these people were folks that had a relationship with Jesus and were so undoubtedly unnerved by his death that they felt lost in the world, abandoned, unmoored, adrift. They carried on his message because that was a way to keep the memory of him fresh and close, to continue to live out his mission to the world. We don't need anyone to tell us how they grieved. We know this if we have experienced the palpable grief of losing someone so much a part of our own lives. And what is grief, if not love, persevering? The Jesus story, like other stories from other faith traditions, continues because it is the story of love persevering. Easter is not a reminder that he died, but a reminder that he lived. Easter is a reminder that even though people die, they continue to live on in some form. The law of conservation of energy teaches us that energy is neither created or destroyed. It merely takes on different forms. Science continues to teach us in 2021 that our understandings about death and finality and permanence are still evolving, and that if we truly endeavor to be an open-minded group of people, we have to acknowledge that we are always learning. I've mentioned before the research that a person can still hear for several moments and minutes after death has been declared. Now, researchers at the University of Illinois in Chicago have looked at our brain cells up to 24 hours post-mortem. While the gene expression relating to memory and thinking deteriorates quickly, and many other genes remain relatively stable for 24 hours, a group of genes dubbed the zombie genes increase their activity starting at death and last for about 12 hours. They grow tendrils. As Dr. Jeffrey Loeb says about his research, most studies assume that everything in the brain stops when the heart stops beating, but this is not so. Our findings will be needed to interpret research on human brain tissues. We just haven't quantified these changes until now. And the neurologists aren't the only ones making new discoveries in apparently dormant subjects. There's a math theorem called friends and strangers that for some reason tries to calculate how many friends you need to invite to a party to maximize the numbers of people who know each other with the numbers of people who don't know each other in order to have the best party. For years, this theorem has been stuck, giving a range of possible answers. But mathematicians finally have a breakthrough using something called multicolor Ramsey numbers. We continue to evolve and learn and make new discoveries. And the Easter justice work continues too, as our government continues to execute people thousands of years after the death of Jesus, many of whom are innocent or bystanders or plagued by the injustices of our system. Even now, social justice advocates in Alabama are working on the case of DeForest Johnson, a man who sits on death row for the killing of a sheriff's deputy. Even though there are multiple inconsistencies, even though 10 witnesses, 10, place him on the other side of town at the time of the murder, even though 4 death row defendants convicted under the same district attorney, including Anthony Ray Hinton, have been exonerated. Part of this Easter work is also remembering the important justice work that continues today. Easter, for all of its theological complexities and traditions, is all about remembering the death of one who was loved by his community. So much so that they carried on his teachings and his stories after his death. This Easter, whether you celebrate by adoring baby animals, hiding eggs that represent the hope of new life, or reflect at the empty tomb, remember your mortality. Remember that loving others is the most important legacy, as shown in Jesus' story. Love others as much as you love yourself. Therein lies the power of immortality. And what is grief, if not love persevering? Let our love for those who have gone before us illuminate our path as we persevere with those we love today. May you be held in the heart of community until we are joyfully reunited in person. Amen. Blessed be, and happy Easter.
Please join together in our closing hymn.
The earth awakes again, Alleluia, from the winter's bond and pain, Alleluia, bring relief and flower and spray, Alleluia, to adorn this happy day, Alleluia. Once again the word comes true, Alleluia. All the earth shall be made new, Alleluia. Now the dark old days spring. Alleluia.
For all those who celebrate the resurrection of Jesus, may this day be another affirmation of divine love and promise. For all those who see the eternal story of new spring and life beginning anew, may you breathe deeply of a season of promise and hope. For all those who are experiencing despair or hopelessness this Easter, may you find in the darkness or depression a doorway to light and warmth that offers you freedom. For all of us, together we can do what no one isolated person can do. Rolling away the heavy stone aside reminds us that we are far more powerful than we could ever be on our own. Our offering of strong hands to help, our prayers made real. Let us begin again to love.